What is going on, everybody? We got a huge patch today, quite possibly the biggest patch balance-wise that the game's ever seen, maybe? I don't know off the top of my head, but pretty darn close. So we got a lot to talk about. Let's hop on into these changes, and we're just going to go through the list. First up, we've got Doomsday going from 24 health down to 22. This is the first of a couple changes to what I think is mainly targeted at Flash Doomsday. But just Doomsday in general has been a very strong leader. So going down 2 health, I think, is perfectly fair there. Next up, we've got the Wonder Woman leader going up 1 health to 22. Wonder Woman being a leader that loves using her own health as a resource to trade into opponents. Every bit of health matters. I think Wonder Woman was already pretty solid, and more health is only going to be good. Lex is getting his nerf reverted, going back up to 19 health. I think that's fair. He's been in kind of a weak state, so giving him a little something is good. Black Adam is kind of trading places with Doomsday. Since his ability is a little bit more slow to get going, it makes sense to give him the little health buff since Doomsday needs less setup. Hal Jordan is another good one that I'm happy about. He had 4 attack. He's going up to +5. So while not quite in Shazam territory, +5 attack still means he trades with a lot of things, which is quite strong and quite good. One of my favorite changes is Batgirl, who is becoming a 4 attack leader. Everything else about her stays the same, but going from 3 attack to 4 is an interesting breakpoint that I don't know how often it's going to matter, but it is an additional boost for Batgirl that I'm all over. Then we have a couple changes to Batman-related things. 2 gadget changes and their corresponding upgrade changes. And then there's a couple of recruit changes as well. But first, we've got Tear Gas. It used to be permanent -2 attack, and now it is just this turn. Same thing with upgraded. And this one is a rather big change. I still don't think Batman's taking a big hit. But previously, if you were playing a more aggressive deck and Batman activated, in the early game, Batarang and Tear Gas are very similar power level. Because, Batarang kills things, Tear Gas makes it basically useless, just sitting on the board doing nothing. And the odds of rolling either Batarang or Tear Gas was, I think, 84-point-something%. So pretty darn close to guaranteed. Now, Tear Gas isn't a permanent answer to a weak recruit on the board, it just is a 1-turn slowdown. So this is a pretty big deal for Batman against more aggressive strategies. And then on top of that, Bandage is going from heal 3 down to heal 2. And this is another big one because they could have just touched Batman's health. However, the way bandages work, you basically had to try and make sure that you killed Batman. If not in 1 turn, then definitely in 2 turns. Otherwise, he's going to generate enough bandages where all the damage you've done just kind of gets healed away. He can still kind of do some of that, but, 2 damage is 33% less healing, so it's going to scale less well. Another major change, 2 major changes in the Tyranny package, Ladama is going from 2 gold cards to 3 gold cards, so that is a very big slowdown for Ladama. This is going to be a big deal, especially if you're not playing her in, like, Bat Ivy, where you can play Paco to kind of speed this up. If you're actually legitimately playing 3 gold cards, this is going to slow you down quite a bit. And then on top of that, Friends in High Places is getting its buff reduced from +3/+3 down to +2/+2. So this feels less bad for the, Shaz Lex kind of flash that you can pull from Friends in High Places. And just in general, Friends in High Places is strong, so bringing the buff down a little bit makes sense. Next up, we've got another nerf that I think is mainly targeted at Flash Doomsday, and it is John Stewart. His ability can now only target enemy recruits. Previously, it could go face, so this is potentially 4 to 8 points of burn damage being removed from Flash Doomsday per game. So that's a big deal. And then below that, this is a change that I have been clamoring for. Energy Blast is now recruit only as well. That means between just these 2 changes, Flash Doomsday lost upwards of 16 points of damage from their deck list, as well as Doomsday losing 2 HP. I think that is just enough of a tweak to not necessarily bring down the power level of Flash Doomsday. I think it's still going to be a very strong deck. I just think that the high roll potential is going to be reduced, which should make the deck feel a little bit better to play against. Next up, we've got Disorganized Crime. Previously, it used to only give recruits +2 attack. Now it gives them +2 health as well. I still think there's going to be a fringe card, but at least makes it more interesting to try and build around. Laugh It Up gets a huge buff. It used to be draw 2 cards, now you draw 3, which means if you play it with Harley, you go up to 4 cards next turn. This is a nice buff for discard decks. You still have to draw the card, but it's a nice buff in general. Up, Up, and Away is another one that I'm very interested to mess around with, because this used to be +4 attack this turn. Now it is permanent +4 attack on your shield recruits. I think this is going to be very strong. That is a big buff for the shield package in Might. Lead from the Front gets a pretty solid buff as well. I think it used to be +5 attack. Now it's +7 attack, and your leader gets shield. So not counting obvious, flash things, this is kind of just like a solid removal option. Ideally, you could even combine it with flash to just kill something. But, it's a more interesting card to play. I still think it's going to be more of a combo potential kind of card. Lois Lane is getting changed to, it used to be after you play, now it is after you deploy. I think the difference being that the recruit resolves now. So if it's something like Kong that gains a shield, it will count as being a shield for Lois and other kind of similar fringe use cases like that. Talia is getting her healing buffed by 1, so now she has 4 damage to each leader, making her, she was already one of the better healing cards in the game, and she gets a little bit better. I think Talia is quite playable. Chip, I think, was +1/+1, now he's going up to +2/+1. Just a solid little poke for Lanterns. I don't want Lanterns to ever get too good, so giving them little bits of love like that I think is understandable. Cosmic Staff got buffed from generate a bronze to generate a silver. But now, basically, Cosmic Staff pays for itself. You just have to spend the card, because you generate the silver. That's pretty solid. Xanadu has now Hidden. She did not used to have Hidden. So you're more than likely going to be able to get 2 spells from her if you want to, versus just 1. And it's harder for her to be removed. Cranial Explosive, I believe, used to be sacrifice a Suicide Squad recruit. Now it's just sacrifice any recruit to give all of your Suicide Squad recruits everywhere +2 attack. So a nice little buff for Cranial Explosive, and I think this is a nice precedent to set that the Suicide Squad set isn't really having enough of an impact, so they're going to give that, and I think there's at least one other buff in here. We have a couple changes for Aquaman's fish. 3 of them. Anglerfish going down 1 health, Humpback Whale going down 1 health, and Storm the Seahorse going down 1 health. So the chunkier ones, the harder one, the more important ones to remove, really. Not so much Humpback Whale, but Storm and Anglerfish are 2 of the most important ones to remove. Probably 2 of the best rolls for Aquaman. They're getting a little bit easier to remove. With the buff, Anglerfish will be a 4/3, and Storm will be a 0/3, or a 1/3. So those should be a little bit easier to answer. And then, unfortunately, you still have your Mera high rolls with Shark and Squid and the Narwhal, but, that's fine. The Silver Batman is going from a 3/5 down to a 2/5. He could scale out of control very quickly, especially with all of Batman's gadgets. We have 2 1-attack nerfs for Alfred and Diggle. So this is more of the kind of Batman package getting nerfed in general. I think this is perfectly fair. Diggle being a 2/4 is still solid after you activate him. Speedy was one of the ones I was kind of surprised by, losing 1 health. But this should mean that in addition to the random arrow giving you value, Speedy shouldn't be able to trade and stay alive with most things in the game. Liberty Bell is getting her 1 health reverted down back to a 3/1. I think that makes sense. I don't think she ever really needed the buff. But on the flip side, Rabid Robin becomes a 3/2. And I think the most important aspect of this is that he survives Appetite for Conquest at least once. And that's important because playing Appetite one time made Batman Who Laughs just pointless. Joker is getting additional 2 health to be a 6/5. This is now a much more competitively statted body. And while it still might not be enough to make a mid-range to slower inmates deck a thing, Joker now is a good enough body where I think you consider just tossing him into a lot of Anarchy decks. Kind of just like Lobo, where even if you don't have the synergy, it's kind of just good enough to run. Embrace Madness is free. I think that makes sense. This is a nice buff for discard as well. Lord Deathman is now starting as a 3/3. That is now as close to I think it's about premium bronze stat line. So one activation makes him a 5/5. That's pushing him into silver territory. That's a very nice buff for Lord Deathman. I'm excited to mess around with that. Peacemaker getting a huge buff up to a 5/4. I can see why they made him a 5/1, just because his ability is incredibly powerful. But I don't think we have enough good Hunter cards yet for Peacemaker to be a problem, so giving him a buff, even if it's temporary until Hunter gets more support, I think is understandable. Mordrew is now a 7/10, just a truly massive stat line for a silver. He has a very big cost to summon, being that you have to sacrifice a 5-attack recruit, a friendly one, and if you don't have a 5-attack recruit, he kills himself. So having a giant payoff makes sense for such a high cost. But now I think Mordrew is like in the stat range where like you kind of try and find a way to make him work. Mercy Graves is getting a 1-point health buff to a 2/4. I think this makes her stat line pretty interesting. 2/3 was already okay for how strong her effect is. Now 2/4 is like, you know, this can answer 2 bronze recruits probably most of the time. So this can just kind of shut down a lot of opponents in certain situations. Then we've got another very nice buff for one of the Suicide Squad cards. Amanda Waller is going from a 1/2 to a 3/2. She should still have hidden. The 2 attack is really nice. Really makes it so that even if you can't activate her, playing her on turn 1 means that she should be able to trade into almost anything your opponent's going to play. Somar Light is getting a stat reach redistribution and becoming a 2/3. And the main thing about this is this makes her much harder to kill in the early game. So if you play her on Bronze 2, you'll get a 2/3, you'll get a 5/5, and the 2/3, if you can manage to hide it, isn't going to just die to a single Batarang. So this is a nice little additional poke for Lanterns. And then Renee Montoya, who already had a pretty interesting ability, giving all of your Hunter recruits ambush for the turn, is getting a +1/+1 buff up to a 4/4. I think this makes her quite playable. And I still think I would want to continue messing around with Hunters in my more mid-range decks. As a whole, I think this is the exact kind of balance patch I wanted. Probably a bit larger than you would want in a balance patch, but since we waited so long to do it, I think it needed to be larger. I still think, in general, Batman is going to be one of the top leaders, but I think the changes to him are at least interesting enough where I'm not going to complain, and I'm excited to see how this works out. Flash Doomsday got some shaved off the top, but it's still going to be a very strong deck. I don't expect that to go anywhere, but shaving it off the top is exactly how I wanted to see that happen. The discard buffs and the buff to Batgirl are very interesting to me. I like the Hal Jordan buff. I like some of these other buffs in here, like Up, Up, and Away. The Aquaman buffs, or nerfs, I think are a good touch to some of his worst feeling fish. I still don't think he needs a permanent scaling effect. Like, I think just giving your sea creatures +1/+1 is fine. But also, I recognize that next season is probably going to be Aquaman themed, and you don't want to just completely nuke the leader right before a Aquaman movie comes out. And I am quite happy with some of the tactics changes. I still think tactics still has some of the best cards in the game, and Batman's still going to be one of the best leaders in the game, but those changes are interesting enough where I'm not going to complain. So yeah. Biggest patch I think we've ever got. Hopefully this causes a big shakeup in the meta because we've badly needed one. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section about the patch changes. Which are you most excited for? What are you most upset by? If you're a Flash Doomsday player, let me know if you're sad. I'm not going to roast you. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.